Panther people, what up? The preseason is behind us. Let's talk about week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'll tell you, I'm nervous. What's going on? You watch Panthers Post. Thanks for joining. Quick recap of the Steelers beating the Carolina Panthers in Bank of America Stadium. A lot of Steelers fans there. Is what it is. Shout out to Latham Ransom. He got a nice pick in his rookie year in the preseason. Jimmy Horn did his thing in special teams. I think he's going to be making this team, no doubt. Princey Uman-Milan, before he hurt his shoulder, out for the game. I thought he had great penetration, as well as other rookie from Florida, Cam Jackson. I thought he's pretty fast for a big dude. The linebacker, the backup linebacker, Windman, with a massive hit in special teams. He could be a special teams guy potentially. James Mitchell, the only touchdown, the first touchdown in the last 2 preseason games. Jack Plummer finding him at the corner of the end zone, completely open. We'll see if he makes the team. And then Trevor Etienne, the rookie running back out of the University of Georgia. I think he's going to be a great addition to the running back room. I think he offers not just a lot of speed, but a lot of tenacity, truculence, if you will, in the running back backfield. Honorable mention to my namesake, Bryce Perkins. Joined the team less than 5 days ago. Played the entire second half. The guy has some butterfingers for a larger individual, guy who's an MVP in the UFL. Fumbled the ball like twice, 4 times, really, if you want to look back on it. Like, he just can't hold on to the ball. Was 10 for 11, I think 72 yards, no touchdowns. He rushed for a little bit. I could see him as a practice squad player. Any way that you can develop him, even though he's 28 years old. Any excuse to get a jersey with my last name on it. But if not him, Harold Perkins Jr. next year. Either way, that's in the past. We'll see who actually makes this team. I've already seen a nice little article from Mike Kay and Alex Zetlow in the Charlotte Observer. They kind of predict the 53-man roster. We can get right to it. Let's talk about the wide receiver room. Seems like they're going to be getting 7 wide receivers on the 53-man roster. Some guys could be eating it, including most notably David Moore. He is a self-professed Dave Canales guy. Now, we've heard from Alex Zetlow. We've heard from Mike Kay, who interviewed the veteran wide receiver, who dates back with Dave Canales all the way to the Seattle days. That he could be a practice squad guy who's kind of like a glue dude in the wide receiver room. So if he's not making the 53, that means Hunter Renfrow, who barely played in the preseason but does offer a lot of dynamism in the wide receiver room in terms of his route running ability. Jimmy Horn and Jalen Coker, both guys, the last 2 I just mentioned, did play in the last preseason game against the Steelers, but didn't really play anything on offense, mainly on special teams. We've also heard some rumors that Adam Thielen, Bryce's go-to wide receiver thus far in his young professional career, could be traded back to Minnesota. They are out right now with a couple players, so they could maybe be reunited with one of their better wide receivers in their recent history, minus Justin Jefferson. What could the Panthers get in return for an Adam Thielen? Maybe a late round pick. But I think what they get the most is just more opportunities for the young guys. T-Mac being able to step up in a big way, maybe taking a grasp even in his rookie year as the number 1 wide receiver. Xavier Legette, we're hearing from guys talking to ESPN saying that he can be an AJ Brown clone, and this year this could be his coming out party. He's already come out off the field. He's got to come out on the field as well, no doubt. And then, of course, Jalen Coker, who you could argue, has outplayed every wide receiver in this wide receiver room thus far in the preseason. More reps for him. He could be the Adam Thielen replacement. And then, of course, you got your Hunter Renfrows and Jimmy Horns. So that, the most competitive part of this team, the most entertaining part of this team right now, really, is the wide receiver room, who's going to make the cut. And it seems like, at least according to Mike Kay and Alex Zetlow, who cover the team every day, David Moore could be the odd man out. James Mitchell, the tight end, he could also be the odd man out. They activated Tommy Tremble. So you got Tommy Tremble, Mitchell Evans, and JT Sanders. So it is a crowded tight end room. James Mitchell, who showed flashes during training camp, he could maybe they could put him on the practice roster. We'll see. As for the cornerback room, Mr. Bartholomew, who got torched this evening against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he could also be the odd man out in the cornerback room. That, to me, was maybe the second most competitive room, trying to see, who is going to be the third cornerback right now. So you got, obviously, J.C. Horn, you got Mike Jack, you got Charles Smith-Wade, who's been out there doing his thing, and then you got Corey Thornton, who's come out of nowhere. Again, Dan Morgan. If Corey Thornton actually becomes a thing, and contributes to this defense. Dan Morgan and his scouting department needs someone there is going to be getting a raise or going to be getting poached from some other team, because if you find a Jalen Coker and a Corey Thornton actually contributing to your first team and they're on a super cheap deal, I'm talking like $200,000 deal, you deserve a raise as in the scout, and I'm sure these guys will eventually get a raise as well. It looks like they're going to be making the team. So yeah, those are some of the more competitive battles on the roster. So we'll get that. We'll figure that out once it's made available. Cut down day is going to be on Tuesdays, so there could be some surprise cuts out there. Also, maybe some surprise cuts on other teams, and maybe the Panthers could take advantage of that. You got to think about that. Maybe some, a safety out there, a linebacker who might be on the street. The Panthers can just pick them up without getting rid of any of their assets. Speaking of assets, Micah Parsons still upset with the Dallas Cowboys. It looks like that relationship is completely toxic. Jerry Jones was on with Michael Irvin on some kind of podcast talking about how, they offered to make him like the most highest paid defensive player in NFL history, some record-breaking guaranteed money. His agent, Micah Parsons' agent, told him to shove it up their a-hole. So that's not great. Trey Hendrickson, still on the market. Haven't heard anything about that. They talked about that in the Processing Blue podcast, and they mentioned how, you kind of have to eat his salary as well. The Panthers might not be in the opportunity to do that right now. For a guy who's turning 31, I believe, this year, they're not in that position where they're trying to win right now. I just was watching NFL Network, Maurice Jones-Drew, say what you want about him. He's definitely a better commentator than Steve Smith. I'm sorry. He has the Panthers finishing third in the NFC South, just above the lowly New Orleans Saints. So, getting rid of assets to get a guy like Trey Hendrickson, who's turning 31 this year, might not be a good move. However, they didn't delve into it much into that podcast, but they do think Micah Parsons to the Panthers makes a lot of sense because he's just entering his prime. I don't even think he's 28 years old. That means he's still younger than Bryce Perkins, who's 28 and maybe a developmental quarterback with the Panthers. Either way. So that's some of the moves we can see. Like, man, if I wake up next Wednesday and Micah Parsons is a member of the Panthers and we're out a first-round pick and, I don't know, Jimmy Horn Jr., I'd be okay with it. So let me know what you think. Who do you think is going to make the 53-man roster? What do you think about the preseason? You worried about it? And who do you think could maybe get cut and you'd be upset? Let's get the pulse, though, of Panther Nation. I have a weird feeling people are still kind of hurting from that preseason game last week where the Panthers their starting offense, minus Damian Lewis, who Dave Canales just said will be making a start against Jacksonville. He should be good to go. He is quite confident. And it looks like, watching Processing Blue, that Damian Lewis is kind of a little bit of that attitude. Robert Hunt gets a lot of pub as being like the face and the voice of the offensive line. But Damian Lewis is kind of a quiet assassin out there. So that's going to be a big bump for Bryce Young company with him starting against Jacksonville Jaguars in week 1. But, if you're still hurting from that awful showing in that second preseason game, I think today's game against the Pittsburgh Steelers was a little bit more encouraging. I think the big part was that Dave Canales and Joe Avero were calling the plays. You saw wide open throws to James Mitchell, which I talked about before, scheming it a little bit better. I thought the Panthers were a little bit more stubborn on the run, more successful in the run as well. Mind you, it didn't seem like actually the Pittsburgh Steelers were starting their first team defense. I thought the Panthers moved the ball pretty okay, even with Jack Plummer under center. So that being said, I'm still really nervous, more so of what's at stake here and just how thirsty Panther fans are for success. It has been a grind since the heyday of 2015, 2016, the downfall of Cam Newton, the abrupt retirement of Luke Kuechly, the Matt Rule era. Mind you, I think we're reaching year 7 now since Matt Rule got hired initially, and I think we're on the up. It's nothing to do with him, but we've been through a lot, and things were looking promising in this offseason with the additions we saw on the defensive line, on the wide receiver room. It seems to be catered for Bryce, and again, there's the preseason. Not reading too much into it, but there's a lot of pressure on Bryce to look exponentially better than he has thus far in the preseason. I know that is a very, very small sample size, But I have a feeling that if Bryce's first pass is either too short, too long, knocked down, gosh forbid, intercepted. I think I predicted that was going to happen against the Saints, and I think it may have. I think his first pass in his second year was picked off, and it was an awful game. I think Panther Nation will not have a pulse. I think our hearts would explode. We need this guy to get to another level, even compared to how we finished. If he gets to the way he was in Atlanta and just carried that into week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who a team I'm not really that scared about, and just gets into that flow state. I'm going to go back to that interview I had with Alex Zettler with the Charlotte Observer. Bryce is a streaky quarterback. That's what he was saying. How, there are times when there just seems to be a lot of inertia, just a lot of movement. And it's kind of like he's running through peanut butter. That's the way it looked like in that second preseason game. If we get Bryce Young in week 18, in week 1, I think Panther fans are going to be flying. I think the networks are going to be flying. I think everyone's going to feel good about this Panther team because I think everyone wants it to happen because their improvements on this team have been so intentional with that defensive line. And what was really a bummer, we heard from Jonathan Alexander, who used to work for the Charlotte Observer. Now he covers the Houston Texans, and he's straight up said to WFNZ that, or not WFNZ, yeah, it's WFNZ, I believe, or I think it was Ollie and I forget his name. They're in Raleigh. He just straight up said that the Panthers' defensive line is terrible, is bad, which that made my heart sink because that's, talk about intention. That was the goal this offseason, was to improve the other side of the trenches. They did what they did with Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. The defensive line, Turk Warden, Bobby Brown, Princey Umanmielen, Nick Scorton, Patrick Jones III. Like, they put money into this defensive line for a reason. The return of Derek Brown, like, this defensive line, just with the addition of Derek Brown, a healthy Derek Brown, should be way better than last year to stop the run. And I'm not agreeing with Jonathan Alexander. This is a bad defensive, like terrible defensive line. And yes, it's the preseason, but even against the Steelers in a preseason game without the starters out there, it was pretty darn easy to run on this team. It was pretty darn easy to run on this team. Let me just take a look at the box score real quick. In total, they ran for 100 yards. Okay, the Panthers ran for 171. Raheem Blackshear, 35 yards. Bryce Perkins had 28. Just want to say. Trevor Etienne with 26. So they had a good amount of dudes just running the ball in general. Like, we have 2 quarterbacks right now rushing for over 22 yards. But there were times where it was a little bit too easy to run through our line, and the same deal. There was very little pass rush. Skylar Thompson passing for 152 yards. Not too much pressure. I did mention Cam Jackson and Princey getting some pressure there. Hopefully it's better when the full-time starters are out there. So that's why I do kind of understand the idea of trading for a Trey Hendrickson. 100% I understand the idea of trading for a Micah Parsons. That could be transformative for this defense. It's no surprise that if you are a sicko and you're looking at 2026 NFL mock drafts, the Panthers are picking the top 10, which I think is ridiculous, but they're looking at an edge. I think that makes a lot of sense. You got to keep building on that. I don't think anyone is really an all-star as of yet, but I think the highest amount of pressure going into this year, especially just in week 1, because we saw what it did to the vibes in week 1 last year, losing to the Saints in the way they did. Obviously, number 1 pressure is on Bryce Young. Number 2 is on this defensive line. Like, the additions they put there, you got Super Bowl winners in Wharton. You need that to step up and stuff Travis Etienne and get to Trevor Lawrence and make his life a living hell. And because the linebacker spot is a weakness on this team. You got J.C. Horn, you got Mike Jack, but you're one injury away from that being a liability. That needs to be the strength, and it needs to be established immediately. So there's a lot of pressure on the defensive line, and in turn, there's a lot of pressure on Ajir Avero because right now, everybody's healthy. Everybody's healthy in week one. Your defense didn't look great throughout the preseason. It needs to come out firing week one against the Jags. And then the next pressure's on Dave Canales because, again, no excuses. You added the weapons to Bryce Young. You're the quarterback guru. You got yourself your Mike Evans and Tetro McMillan. Let's see it friggin' fly. We can't, and the amount of time that this first team offense did not play, you could have put them out in the first series in this game. You could have. The Steelers put their starting defensive out. They had Jalen Ramsey out there making plays. Why couldn't you have your first team offense out there? It was at home. Some people out there can't afford regular season tickets. I've seen some of the prices, especially against the Bills. It's like $200 American in 500s. So why not put the starters out there? It could be like a real deal, live bullet fan fest. Put them out there. Just see what they can do. Because right now, the last play they made was like a two garbage series with -2 yards. So the pressure's on Dave, on not just, everyone out there is geared towards Bryce and this offense being a success, but also, again, another preseason where the starters barely played and showed very little chemistry and now are expected to take 2 weeks off and then just come out when it really matters against a team that is also kind of on the up. Anyways, that's how I'm feeling. I'm a little bit nervous. I feel it reminds me of the times when Cam Newton was playing and I wanted him to succeed so badly. Every time he dropped back and clearly wasn't running and just cocking that thing back, ready to let it go. I just prayed that thing would not get intercepted. I would pray that it would go long because it was so hard to see whether Cam Newton was throwing a touch or not. He was just so muscular. You weren't sure. I just wanted him to succeed because I knew if he didn't, the noise would be deafening. Same thing with Bryce Young. If this kid doesn't succeed, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt everybody. Like, I'm not even looking at the 2026 draft. I need him. I kind of am looking at the 2026 draft just in case. Like 1% of me. Comment below if you're looking at the 26 QB draft. Just saying, it's deep. It's deep. It's not like last year when it was like Cam Ward and that was it. It's deep. 1%. 1% of me is looking. But I need Bryce to succeed. I need him to succeed. I need him to look like Flow State Bryce. That's it. So let me know in the comments below. How do you feel about the preseason? How do you feel about who's going to make the 53-man roster? How are you feeling going into week one against the Jacksonville Jaguars? Like, subscribe, spread the word. Road to 10,000 subs. Let's go.